just a few very general comments about the last 2 days of reviews. That's after you. Yeah. To the students. And then we will ask all the students to leave. And if the guests, stay with us for a little while, we will just also go into some of the assessment. And that's the plan then before we end the session. Okay, thank you.
Hello everyone. The link to my Miro board containing all the videos in the presentation and high quality is added in the chat box. Please have a look because the quality is highly reduced for Zoom streaming purposes. Thank you. I am Srikrishnan and I'll be presenting my thesis, Metamorphosis. The word metamorphosis in literary terms means the process of changing shape. Ovid was the first one to write a book on metamorphosis. His book, Metamorphosis in Library, talks about forms transforming into new entities. In art, metamorphosis can be defined as the transformation of one object into a similar or different object that represents something else. The transformation can be based on its appearance, character, condition, or function. The essence of metamorphosis is not in the final form, but in the intermediate transitional phases. The painting Metamorphosis of Narcissus is Dali's interpretation of Greek myth of Narcissus based on Ovid's poem. In Dali's depiction, Narcissus' vague human figure staring into the water is morphed to a fractured hand coming out of the ground holding an egg which cracks to give rise to a flower. This double imaging represents the transformation Narcissus undergoes and hence the title of the painting. Apart from metamorphosis, I was also interested in the duality that exists in the painting. My thesis will deal with how new things emerge when two forms which exist in duality come together using the principle of metamorphosis. For that, I'll be closely reading the painting to extract devices and techniques which will be applied in architecture. Paranoid critical method was a surrealistic technique developed by Dali. It is the ability of the artist or the viewer to invoke a paranoid state and perceive multiple images within the same configuration. Dali was able to perceive a human and a hand within the same configuration. Apart from these two, Dali was also able to perceive many more objects within the same configuration. The design process is divided into 3 stages: the selection, the transformation, and the landing. In each stage, I'll be applying a set of devices obtained from formal analysis of the painting. The Frankfurt collection consists of a catalog of buildings categorized into 6 different typologies. The devices obtained from the painting will be applied to buildings selected from the collection. For my project, I'll be choosing Westhafen, a tower, and the Hauptbahnhof, a megaform. The formal similarities between the two, which led to the selection, are as follows. In the painting, the two forms look similar only when it is viewed from a particular viewpoint. We can see the two objects have no similarity when it's viewed from other angles. When the Hauptbahnhof is viewed as a plan and the Westhafen as an elevation, they show resemblance. The two buildings also represent a dual nature, horizontality and verticality. Dali was experimenting with the idea of stereoscopy in the painting. His idea was that the two objects, the human and the hand, would combine and turn into 3 dimensions, and metamorphosis would actually be enacted while viewing the painting. The idea is used as a technique of overlapping. Anthropometrically, the hand is a part of the human body. In the painting, these two objects are made to look like they are same in terms of scale. Similarly, the Westhafen Tower can be imagined to be a part of the Hauptbahnhof. The next stage is transformation. The devices fracturing, disassemblage, form content, shape morphing, and double image are used in this stage. Dali had a fascination with the idea of fracturing. In the painting, the egg fractures and gives rise to a flower. Similarly, there are fractures and scars all over the hand, which depicts decay. Dali uses the idea of fracturing to give a hint of objects emerging and old objects disintegrating. Using this device, I started fracturing the tower and the Hauptbahnhof. The fracture happens throughout the form, resulting in fragments which vary in scale and size. In this device, the first object is perceived as a single entity, representing a human, whereas the other object can be disassembled into multiple entities, each having a specific meaning. Using this device, I started disassembling the fragments of Westhafen and Hauptbahnhof obtained from fracturing. The same form has 2 different content in both the objects. For example, the form of the head and egg are same, but the content is different. This can be seen in parts and also as a whole in the 2 objects. So I use this idea to extract 2 different content from Westhafen and Hauptbahnhof using the same form obtained from fracturing, the basic form of both. This is a catalog showing the basic forms, their corresponding content from Hobonop, their corresponding content from Westhoffen. Shape morphing is a technique in which one object transforms into other in multiple transition stages. This animation shows the fractured shape morphing of a hand into a human. When a square morphs into a triangle, the gray portion in the middle denotes the intermediate state in morphing, which has qualities of both square and a triangle. We can easily figure out the human and the hand in 25% and 75% morphed outputs, but not in the 50% morphed output. I became interested in the middle morph, where the duality becomes singularity, yet retaining the qualities of the original forms. Using the fragments extracted, the concept of shape morphing is applied to Hobonop and Westhoffen. We could see a complete transformation of one building into another. During this process, the form remains the same and the content changes as a whole and as a part. The essence of metamorphosis lies in the intermediate transitional phases, which I call the middle morph. Throughout the process, there was a constant dialogue between the dual nature of forms, horizontality and verticality, solid and void, part and whole, old and new, etc. All these aspects of duality now exist in a single form in the middle morph. And the same with the Hobonop. The middle morph obtained is similar to Dali's double image technique. In this painting, he represents the double image as two different objects, whereas in his future paintings, he tries to merge it into a single object, but perceived as two different images. The conceptual sketch by Dali hints the double image combination of human and the hand. The final stage is the landing, which basically is about how the building sits on the ground and its relation to the context. Visual extension is where the artist introduces a reflective plane, in this case, water, to extend the object. There is a part of the object under the reflective plane which is hidden by the reflected image, creating an overlap between the hidden and the reflected part. The actual ground plane where the object rests is hidden. In case of Westhoffen, the river acts as a reflective plane. The basement below the tower is hidden. The next device is ground shift, where while undergoing transformation, there is a new ground plane created. The reflected image is cut to form the new ground plane. In case of Westhoffen, the basement is unearthed from the ground, sitting on its own reflected half, exposing the infrastructure. After the process of metamorphosis, certain elements find a new meaning. The ornamentation becomes a seating, the train becomes an elevator, the floor slab becomes a buttress, the curtain wall becomes a skylight, roof becomes a facade, column becomes a beam, and the lift core becomes the corridor. There are two color themes used in this painting, blue and gray tone and red and yellow tone. There's a clear contrast between the objects and the context. The morphed buildings are then replaced in their corresponding sites, and the color schemes are in contrast with the context, maintaining a dual theme. New Westhoffen Tower with a modified ground sitting next to a tower on a plinth. The new ground lies above the main datum of the city, which creates an interesting relation to the tower and the city. Section of the new Westhoffen Tower. The section through the tower revealed the formation of new voids in the tower typology as a result of metamorphosis. The voids are decentralized, distributed randomly throughout the tower, redefining the purpose of voids in tower. Along with the voids, there are other interesting spaces created inside the tower, which can be seen in this animation. An interior perspective of the void created in the tower, and some of the few perspectives showing the void and interesting spaces. Please follow my link in the mirror board for the high resolution video. New Hobanov with the tracks replaced by gardens, and the section of the new Hobanov. The sectional views of the new Hobanov hints the idea of form within a form or a building within a building. The presence of fragments from a tower looks like a housing within an infrastructure. The animation shows various parts of the tower inside the new Hobanov. An interior perspective showing a form within a form. And some more perspectives. Please follow the link for higher resolution video. Finally, the new Westhoffen and the new Hobanov. Thank you.
Truly stunning visuals and really, really very impressive. Should you say something about, I think just before we go into the details, that the amount of different representations that you created is, I think, really important, because it means that we get to know the architecture for more than what it looks like in a specific image. I was celebrating one of your colleagues earlier, that the name slips my mind just now, but where we were looking at one or two images. And I think it's just an important thing to note that I think especially with the kind of architecture that you're developing in the studio, if you represent this in one or two images, then the product is really the image, because it's so striking and unfamiliar. But when you represent it in this, just the sheer amount of high quality images and videos, it becomes much more about the object or the subject that we're meant to talk about, which I think is something really could seem trivial, but I think it's really important. And I would also say that because I think the more I look at these images and videos, that's really how I feel like I'm meant to appreciate and evaluate this. Because I was going to say with your colleague that presented just before you, that the terminology that you extract from the analysis of the paintings, should you say, by the way, first, that your actual analysis and the way that you represent that analysis was very, very impressive. But I think if we take just metamorphosis out of the process, then I think that cannot be the key to this whole thing, because I could replace that. I could find a synonym to metamorphosis that would work equally well to what I'm seeing here. And similarly, in the previous project with estrangement, I could find another 5 synonyms that would work just as well for what we're. So then, considering what we're looking at here, like I really read this as more the representation than the architecture itself, because although you're the first one that really, or we saw some example, but that puts human beings in 1-to-1 scale, in this project, of course, further reinforcing the fact that we should read this as real spaces. But I think, I mean, I'm appreciating these as the representations that they show. And I think that I think apply more terminology such as fragmentation and that we've heard from others talk about. Because I think it's really interesting to see like how clearly I can understand which parts come from which. I can't really read like the methodology when we're actually inside the building. Maybe that's not the point, but yeah, I'm very impressed. Congratulations.
Thank you.
One thing though about the videos that I'm also really very much enjoying is that this is just a comment about the way about representation, is that I think the path that you take us through could perhaps be more intentional in terms of what you want us to see and when. And I think the video itself could be used as more of a presentation element, meaning that what you're saying and what we're seeing come together. And I think if you even consider having a script before you develop the film, that will help you figure out the shots. But I mean, this is of course on top of a really very well developed project, and I just mean it as a possible step further, because I think also for presentation purposes and for the purpose of your project being seen outside of the school and outside of this presentation, then these videos would work really very well. So if they were maybe a bit more controlled in terms of the film sequence and the narrative, if there were to be one, then I think they could work really well as pieces on their own, so that the project can be seen without you necessarily be there presenting it, but that these films can be a standalone piece.
Yeah, like I think has been said, really, thank you for the presentation. It's exciting to see the work. I'm curious, you talk about sort of, you link the process to the Dali's painting of metamorphosis and transformation. And you know, I think the two types that the painting talks about are somewhat sort of and they're referring to the kind of like the same figure, the figure of the human body in two different postures, in two different conditions. And here you're starting from two architectural typology which are radically different. Especially when they sort of position themselves in relationship to ground or in terms of posture in the city. So one is sort of this vertical presence, sort of an extrusion of a footprint, and the other one is sort of this horizontal mat / infrastructural node within the larger space of the city. And I guess I'm left a little bit wondering if in the process of metamorphosis that you bring us through, which is really exciting, if any thoughts went into, besides sort of the appropriation of certain geometric elements from one to the next, if the thoughts on how this deployment of relationship to the city started sort of supporting other thoughts in the design of the new tower, of the new train station. I don't know the exact name of the building, but because I think they seem changed, they seem transformed, but they are still very similar to what you started working with in a sense. Again, not to take anything away from your project, which is really produces some interior spaces that are truly stunning. But I wonder if, like, in some sense, especially when at some point you went into the analysis of the painting, into the different grounds and the different kind of implication of grounds that even in the vertical unit produces, like if that like I was very surprised to see how the tower is now elevated one more time. So it's not embedded and sort of working with that idea of implied ground, of like true ground, but it's once again sort of seen as a freestanding element, propped up, and sort of taking once again the identity of the initial piece. And vice versa. I think the train station one, I think is beautiful when you bring us through that interior shot and we start seeing sort of these vertical elements now deployed horizontally. I think it's a little bit, would have been amazing to see how that sort of verticality continued to extend or sort of diverge from the original trajectories of the building, aka the train tracks, and sort of begins to imply other ways of relating with that ground. But anyway, beautiful project, really, really stunning visualization. So congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah, but what I find unique with this project, in addition to what's been said, that within like projects from your specialization, it's really you reach for me at least an unprecedented level of almost tectonic resolution you accomplish here. I mean, it's especially these interior views when we see how the materials meet, how you get these kind of different types of materials, the thickness of the horizontal and the vertical, the angles these different slabs, beams are cut, how they protrude each other. It all seems kind of technically not resolved, but very feasible and delicate in a way. And I don't know if that's I really appreciate that within the scope of the agenda. I don't know if that's a good thing. If I say that looks kind of almost as Zumter, kind of sensibility had a go at it, I think Peter will go crazy, or I think it's something where
everything is allowed. Everything is allowed.
Yeah, everything's allowed. Oh, everything's allowed. But I think that really adds something to it. And I don't know where that comes from, because it's certainly something that you as an individual also added to it. You might have had that sensibility already before. And having that applied in such a context, I think that for me at least, makes it a very great project within the agenda, but also shows that the agenda allows for personal kind of development. I think in that sense, I really, really, really like the project.
Thanks a lot.
Great. We've had time on this one as well, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Could we just, yeah. So, like I said before this last presentation, if I could ask you now to just come with a few general comments to students in general, or also students in the respective